Thank you for inviting me. I hope you can hear me. I just went through the participants list, and I want to thank Elisabeth Johann, who she was the key person who bring me in this forum. And I also want to say hello to Alfred Beischinger from Vienna, with whom I worked in a project 30 years ago to large diameter timber. So this is a connection. I have to speak not about the products. I will speak about where does the timber comes from. So I will start with my presentation and go on with the screen sharing. So I will start now. Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of Pro Silva. This is an organization all over Europe and a little bit more. And I want to start with the slogan that's also behind me on this poster, passion for the forest. We need to have passion for the forest to motivate people to go to the forest and to do the right things. And if you look at this picture, I could also finish up with this picture because it shows everything I want to talk about. It shows mature trees, it shows young trees, it shows light and shadow, it shows different tree species and a structured forest. That's what all about. So I will continue. Just a short introduction about Pro Silva. What is Pro Silva? It's an organization, yeah, it chooses the name in a Latin language. So therefore, it should bridge all language gaps between all the members. And it didn't take an English terms, so it was a Latin term. So it was founded more than 30 years ago. And we have a network all over Europe. We have 20 full members and some members under development and contact points in almost each of the European countries. Now, just Poland is about to establish a new organization. What's also important is that we have a mixture in the individual members of scientists, forest managers, and forest administration, and practitioners and foresters. So I think we are one of the biggest networks connecting science and practice. As you see on this historical photo, the inspiration came from the virgin forests from the former Yugoslavia, and this has strong connections to UFRO. And UFRO, in fact, was one of the basics where Dusan Mlinček, who passed away last December, he was the founding father of this organization. So we want to transform these principles from the virgin forest to managed forest, learning by doing, and have a good communication on the same level. So it's a peer-to-peer communication. What are our basics? It's on one hand, it's simple. On the other hand, it's complicated. Pro Silva builds the main principles are the pillars, as you already mentioned. And we try to combine economic, ecological, and social aspects. So the principles that are written down, you can also download them from our website, are the conservation of the ecosystem. That's number one. So I think ecosystem is not a product of the forest, it's a basic, of course. So the forest should be treated as an ecosystem and not as a plantation of some artificial things. We try to protect the soil, the climate. We have now the first connects to the main topic of this symposium. Production of timber, of course, also, and the fourth point, recreation, and also cultural aspects. So we try to promote forest treatment that follows primary natural processes, but we manage the forest. That's very important. Then there are a lot of other principles published. They were published already 10 years ago or longer, and they all cover the main topics that we are discussing now. So it's really astonishing how forthseeing they were at that time. So we have a principal paper about good management of carbon, full in the in the team. Energy, Mediterranean forest, forest adaptation to risks and biodiversity, and also some very good paper, I think, about the non-native trees species, how they should be integrated in our forests. And the last paper cares about landscape protection. So this all comes to the final sentence that forest and man have an interactions in centuries. When people came to new regions, they had to destroy the forest to have agricultural land. And now we have, in some parts of the world, we have a development that's going in the opposite direction now. What are we doing? Just in short words, Pro Silva has had 31 congresses and meetings with up to 400 participants. So I'm very sad that our meeting from 2020 was first postponed to 2021, and now a few days ago we had to postpone it to 2022. So now we will have also a virtual meeting in 2021, and we try to intensify the exchange of this information within our member countries. One important thing is that we don't speak in the rooms. We go to the forest. We go to exemplary forests to discuss certain silvicultural treatments and also about the tree species and mixtures, etc. We have cooperation with educational and scientific organizations, and now also some kind of press release. But what is important now, also in relation to the first presentation of today, is that we must involve in some political discussions. The time is, we cannot hide in the forest. We have to go to the public. That's very important. So we have to develop policy statements and bring this to the public. This led to the honor that I just received, an invitation to speak as a panelist in the middle of April at the Forest Europe 8th Minister Conference. So we are recognized very well in all these international organizations. And the last one about what we're doing, I think one of the most important things is that we have Exemplary Forest, a network of Exemplary Forest best practice examples. We have collaboration with the European Forest Institute, with French organizations, Association Fruitière Irrégulière, with publications, handbook. And this, on the picture you see in 3 languages, is a kind of toolbox. This is a booklet about 65 pages published by colleagues from Belgium and Wallonia. It's really a good thing because it's a kind of practical toolbox, and you can use it independently of the tree species which are you working with. Now we are also involved in different projects, and in some of our members countries we have really good success in forest policies. For example, in Ireland, in Hungary, also in the Czech Republic, it came to really practical results. For example, subsidy financial support for converting even-aged forests to uneven-aged mixed forest in Ireland. So now I'm coming to the products, and I think this picture is very important because it shows everything that we have to care about. We need a forest, a healthy, resilient forest, but of course we need the products that come out of this forest. So these 3 pictures should symbolize this, that we cut trees, we bring them to the market, and we have nice products. And on the right side of the screen, you see this cartoon, this drawing, and I used this this comes from Dusan Linček, one of the founding fathers, and he uses this picture with the sorcerer with his band in the hand, And one side of the band is written economy, on the other side it's written ecology. So these are the same, it's the same. So we want to establish, or we want to promote, a circular economy with integration of biodiversity, carbon storage in soil, in trees, and in wooden products. We already heard enough about, or a lot of these aspects of the last one. I want to talk more about the first two aspects. We have to care about the nutrient cycle. We have to, of course, include deadwood, biotope trees, and genetic diversity. That's very important. So I think we have to think about this circle between the forest and the products. We have to care about the forest soil. The soil is an organic system. It's part of the nutrient cycle, especially in the forest. We don't have fertilizers. We don't use fertilizers like maybe also in some tree plantations are used. We have a very complex system with mycorrhiza, and the forest soil and the humus aspect is the most important thing of carbon storage in the soil. So we have to keep the soil rich and also improving. Forests are definitely not hydroculture. They're not a greenhouse system. We have to enrich the humus with the litter we leave in the forest. That comes to the aspect of the harvesting of the forest. In the forest, the harvest should leave all the crowns, the branches, and the leaves as most we can. So don't take this away to burn it or to go to heating systems, because the small leaves, they store most of the nutrients are there, not in the timber. So we have to leave the fine material in the forest, leave them for decomposition, and leave them to go in the circle of nutrients in the forest. Of course, this is depending on the soil type, but it's generally a very important aspect. So to not to take all these things out of the forest. If you look at these two pictures, nutrients loss, and there's a discussion also in forest ecology about how will climate change affect the soil development. And very clear is that on southern exposed slopes, big clear cuts lead to loss of nutrients and lead to humus degradation. So this is a quick mobilization of the already stored carbon in the soil to the air. So we should avoid these big clear cuts. So the silvicultural system influences the soil development. That's a clear fact. And I think, of course, in all these aspects of climate change and risks, and so we have sometimes these things happen. Also, if we don't want it, if we have wind throw, and then like we had in southern Austria, Italy, and so on a few years ago, and then we clear the areas, then we have, of course, carbon mobilization and not storage. So it's a twofold thing. We have to be very careful about this. I just have this one from my own forest, products. So what can we do in the forest management? And what I want to show you here is that, at least in this example, in my own forest, since 1945, we could increase the harvest volume by the factor 3, and at the same time increase the growing stock by the factor 3. So this is important. So we can storage carbon as well in the stand, in the growing stock, So we have a higher growing stock, and in the same time have more products. So this is a kind of twofold lever to increase this carbon storage and also mobilization and substitution that in the former presentation was mentioned. We have an increase of saw logs, construction roundwood. We also delivered some special assortments of timber to log house construction and things like that. And we have an increase in higher diameter assortments. Of course, they must fit to the market needs. So this all, as you see here, this is the increase of saw logs since 1945. Now about more than 80% of what we harvest is saw logs that go directly to the products, to long-lasting products, and not to the energy or paper and pulpwood sector. So that just maybe 20% go to the to the last mentioned aspects. So it's important also to increase the products that have a long-lasting life cycle, as mentioned in the presentation before. Then we have big discussions with nature conservation. Pro Silva promotes an integrational approach. We want to have structural and species diversity. It's important to look at the scale level, what's going on in the stands, what's going on in the property, what's going on in the landscape. We want to favor higher resilience or to gain higher resilience. And of course, very important is natural regeneration of the trees, because they offer a far larger genetic variety than planted trees would have that come from the nursery. But there is a big tension in the discussions, especially in Germany, but I also think it will be in France also the same. Nature conservation organizations demand further set-aside forests because they say they have a higher storage of carbon. And this is a discussion that's going on, and they see the substitutional effect that was just mentioned in the presentation before. This leads to more segregation, and then we have the same that also was already mentioned, is import of these chips or pellets from plantation forests, or forests from plantations, maybe from the US or somewhere else, or maybe also Chile or New Zealand, wherever. The protection concepts are sometimes very static, and they don't take into account the climate change effects and the change of the tree species. Also, we have some static indicators for biodiversity. So it's already, everything is changing. So dynamic changes of environment need perspectives that take into account those changes. So we have a glass roof concept of nature conservation. It will not work. So include all these local management concepts and local, Okay, so I go on. So one thing, Pro Silva does not go to strict prescriptions. That will not work. We have published our principles and the guidelines that I mentioned in the first part of that presentation. And we have this technical handbook, the toolbox. And all solutions have to be developed by the owner manager according to the site conditions, to the tree species composition, and to the stand type. So empower the forester and not depower the forester, the forest manager, because if you're killing motivation by maybe overall bleeding bureaucracy, that will maybe lead to abandoned forest and not to products and to forest conditions like we want to have it. One aspect I cannot leave off is hunting. Of course, it has nothing to do with, with the storage of the carbon, but indirectly it has, because if we have high population of rhodiola red deer that prevent natural regeneration of the natural tree species, or we're losing tree species that are very important, like silver fir or oak, and also have bark peeling that destroys the forest. So we need a modern ecologic oriented hunting. So this is one of the biggest, one important aspect also to the forest adaptation to climate change. So the forest, the ecosystem of the forest must be able to work in their own sense, and we need a high variation of tree species, which also leads, of course, to some differentiated products. So hunting must include the knowledge of wildlife ecology and animal health and nature and animal protection as well. But it's not separate aspect. It should be integrated in the forest management. I already come to the last two slides. Maybe I'm right in time. I just looked at my clock. It's 20 minutes I took. So the outlook. One outlook is from the highest point of my own forest. That is the photo on the left side. And you see in the background, you see this mountain range. That's the border to Slovenia. We have beech forests here, some beeches, but mainly spruce, but also silver fir and pine, and so. This is beautiful landscape and also beautiful forest. What Pro Silva took as main motto 12 years ago at the 20th anniversary, and there's a link to the first statement. We want to link practice, science, and education and outreach for advancing close to nature forest management. So that's a special thing. We're not on the side of the science. Of course, there are very many scientists among us, so also silvicultural professors from different countries. And we want also to include practice and public people to inform them. To be a little, to see what's going on. We have a tree that maybe lives for 150 years or maybe longer. And if you go back to 300 years, then we are at the time of Johann Sebastian Bach. So 2-3 life cycles are going to the Baroque. That makes us a little bit modest. And maybe we will have the 40th anniversary of Pro Silva in 2029. And at that time, I was responsible for 40 years, which are just 50 to 25% of a tree life. So we should take this into account in all our considerations. And the last one is the final statement. The final statement with the same photo that we started off. This may sound a little paradox, but continuous forest cover needs consistent management following the same guidelines and principle over decades. So if you're working the same 30 years, but this is a precondition for achieving rapid changes in a relatively slow developing system. So if you have forests like this, it's easy to convert them to a plantation. This is just a joke, but it's on the other side, it would take 100 years to convert a plantation forest to a structured natural ecosystem. So these forests provide far more flexibility and adaptability to changing environmental and socio-economic conditions. And to mention this expression, the ecosystem services, we also try to bring out of the forest in addition to the timber, are of course of growing importance. So with this, I want to thank you for your attention. I'm 5 minutes earlier than I was allowed to, so I hope it was interesting for you. And now we can go to some discussion if you want to do it. So I stop now the screen sharing and we go to the forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Senitza. It was a very interesting paper and very well illustrated, and your conclusions were really perfect. There are two questions which appear in the discussion. One is from Alfred Teichinger. Alfred Teichinger is asking what is the power level of your organization to compare with other NGOs. And there is also, perhaps you can answer directly by typing to Alfred Teichinger. Yeah,
but I can just say it also in a short words. Pro Silva has the main thing is that we treat the forest as an ecosystem, and the ecosystem should work on its own, and therefore and the multiple the sustainability effect, this sustainability approach, I think it's to combine this ecological, economical aspects and also the social aspects is very important. And this is not a new invention. This was written down more than 30 years ago, and in fact it's far older. It goes back 50 years, 100 years in some countries. This movement to treat the forest in a different way is a long-lasting historical. Elisabeth also wrote some papers about this. It's a long-lasting historical aspects, and therefore this is the difference. And we don't have. We try to balance. We try to bring a model that is able to combine different interests. Of course, it has to be adapted in each situation, in each country, in each kind of forest type.
Okay. There is a second question for me. It's an important question about formation. How do you change Bachelor of Forestry courses focusing the use of forestry goods into close to nature forest management? What has to change? It's a very important question for all the different countries, and namely for us in France. Yeah.
Yeah, that's different. It's difficult sometimes. I think it's a question also of the scientists. Do we have an opinion to support this point, or say, oh, we always independent, we don't want to lose some money from some side? So sometimes scientists are they say that we are neutral, but in fact they must confess something, and also of course this must be evidence-based. That's clear. And therefore we have some combinations with courses in the summer with different universities, and we have a growing interest of students also that join our organizations. And I think it's important to have this mixture between practice and science.
Okay. Thanks again for your interesting presentation and for the discussion. Thanks again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for me. Thank you.
Yeah.